All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us virtually today. We appreciate your flexibility on this, and we're glad to have such a strong turnout for this important discussion. Before we get started, just a couple of ground rules. Our presenters have graciously allowed us to ask questions during the presentation, but I ask you to raise your hand and I will call on you if you have a question during their presentation, or you could just simply enter it into the chat if that works for you. Um, and so, and please, if you have a question for me directly, please enter it into the chat. You can do it that way as well. Um,
What?
oh,
Okay, I'm on this call.
Once again, please mute yourselves before we continue, okay? All right. So, as you guys know, my name's Karen Shinoy. I'm the Government Affairs Director for Bridge Association of Realtors. And here at Bridge, we regularly host both virtual and in-person events. So please be sure to visit the Bridge AOR website calendar to stay up to date on upcoming classes, advocacy briefings, and networking opportunities. But today, we're fortunate enough to be joined by two highly experienced prosecutors from the Alameda County District Attorney's Fraud Unit. First is someone some of you might be familiar with. Abby Higashi. Abby Higashi. She, before she was a prosecutor, actually, before she was a prosecutor this time around, she was a realtor for many years. And before she was a realtor, she was a prosecutor to get to start with her career as an attorney. She previously served as an Alameda County Deputy District Attorney through 2000, then transitioned into real estate, obtaining her broker's license and serving in leadership roles, including as the head broker of Zip Realty, where she oversaw 42 U.S. markets and 32 state brokers. And she later served as general counsel at McGuire Real Estate and as vice president of risk management at Golden Gate Sotheby's. After practicing civil litigation and brokerage defense, she returned to the district attorney's office under Ursula Jones Dixon, where she now focuses on real estate fraud prosecution. We're also joined today by Kate DeFerrari, who has served as a deputy district attorney for 22 years in both Contra Costa and Alameda counties. She has handled a wide range of cases, from homicide to domestic violence to financial elder abuse, and has taken 30 jury trials to verdict. For the past 8 years, she has focused on prosecuting fraud-related cases. So we're grateful to have both of them here today and to share their expertise, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Kieran. We appreciate it. We are going to discuss with you what we handle here in real estate fraud on a daily basis over here in the DA's office. So first off, we have just a few slides, but really they're just kind of topical, and so we're going to speak to the topics. And so for now, first we just wanted to show you here. Here is our esteemed District Attorney of Alameda County, Ursula Jones Dixon. And here's some basic contact information for Kate and myself. And we're going to take turns discussing with you various topics. As Kieran noted, feel free to ask questions. We want this to be interactive and we enjoy, kind of the back and forth. So if you have questions relevant to the topic, or if you feel that it's somewhat topical there, we can answer them. If we feel we're going to address them later on, we'll let you know and we'll move on. So first, we're going to start with some of these basic things, common real estate fraud schemes, things you're going to see in rental scams, escrow fraud matters, wire fraud. And then I'm going to turn it over to Kate for additional information. So for now, we're going to stop sharing so that we can just focus on talking to you and one-on-one and seeing you guys. And again, feel free to ask your questions. And Kieran has said, raise your hand or chat them in and he will let us know. So first off, we wanted to talk about some of the most common real estate fraud scams we see.
To the site. And today I have 20,000 views already.
All right. So someone's not muted, but that's okay. I'm going to try to talk over you. So one of the most common ones we see that you will be very familiar with is the recording of false or fraudulent deeds on properties. And most of the time we are dealing with single family homes, which of course is probably the 80% of the transactions you all handle. Could they in fact occur on commercial buildings and multi-units? Absolutely. But most of our crimes occur with respect to single family homes. Um, the recorder's office, interestingly enough, so that you know, is mandated to accept and record documents if they meet certain just kind of administrative or ministerial, barriers to entry. Name, proper jurisdiction, contact information, pay the fee, notarized signatures, things of that nature. The recorder's office is not tasked with verifying the accuracy or the legitimacy, frankly, of the information on the document. And that's what happens is when fraudsters or criminals record documents where they record grant deeds, they record deeds of trust, right? So they are recording documents that either convey ownership to themselves or within their criminal enterprise, or they record documents in which case there are loan encumbrances. And so we frequently see that, and of course, the actual owners of the property are unaware. So these deeds get recorded, and how they then, the criminal aspect of them, number one, of course, is that they're fraudulent. But let's say somebody says, I say, Kieran granted or, conveyed his home to me, and I have made a fraudulent grant deed, and then I file it with the court, and I obtain some fraudulently notarized signatures, or not with the court, with the recorder's office. That goes in there. That is considered a wild deed when eventually caught and adjudicated to get rid of it. But nonetheless, for now, it's a recorded document that creates a change in title and of course a cloud on title, but usually it just creates a full change. And so a new owner is now me. And what a criminal does with that is many different things. One is they'll own it, they'll resell it, they'll reconvey it, they will take out deeds of trust on the property. And so that Kieran doesn't even know that now I pretended I own it. I take a $350,000 loan out with Chase and go through title and escrow, which we'll talk about actually, and how escrow has been defrauded also. Um, and then there's this, I get money, and my collateral is Kieran's home, but Kieran doesn't even know it. So those are many of the things that happen. Of course, people also rent the property and use it for money laundering purposes. So a lot of times, maybe money doesn't even change hands, but by use of the property and by putting encumbrances on it and paying things off, there's money laundering that gets included with that. So much of the fraud we see involves distressed properties. So those of you who work with, and we're not talking, of the 2008 and the 2011 distressed market short sales. We're talking about now where there are properties that are in either pre-foreclosure or foreclosure or whatnot, or trust sales. And some of you represent buyers that are going to go and buy these properties. Be very, very careful, because I would say, and I think Kay would agree, probably 60% of our frauds related to single family homes have to do with properties that are kind of pre-foreclosure, somewhat distressed, because the fraudsters target people who are unable to keep up with their homes, perhaps aren't paying attention to it, don't have others that are paying attention to it that much because, the property's in distress. And they are eyeballing those. And once they change ownership and try to sell it, because we have legitimate bona fide purchasers that are trying to buy properties and in fact have bought them, only for us to come in and let them know that there has been a fraudulent change in title early in the process, and they actually don't own the property legitimately. So be very, very aware if you are working with a property that has previously been distressed or is currently in distress. Be on your highest alert and triple check, and have title and escrow triple check. Okay. Okay. So Janisha said, I didn't hear what happened because her audio went out. Is my audio out? Can everybody hear me? Okay, thanks. Okay, so we want to mention some potential rental scams. One of the things that came up before, because we had done a presentation with one of the large brokerages around the nation, and they had asked us whether or not you guys think it'd be worthwhile to put a sign up in the home that you're selling that says this property is not available for rent. And yes, we would say that's potentially helpful. We haven't seen a ton of rental scams in the general market, but perhaps more in the not distressed, but areas where there's a lot of rentals and there's a lot of changeover or high turnover in rental properties, where or kind of investment type of properties that are being sold as a single family, but then where we say there's rental scams going on is there also where people will, of course, you've probably heard, right? They pretend it's for rent, go put it up on Craigslist, put it up on whatever, rental sites, and then collect applications, collect application fees, collect security deposits, only to then have the renter find out that it's a complete scam, right? So, however, we want to note that the rental scams that we see involve this. So the criminals, the perpetrators of the fraud, will pretend they are renting a property or in fact have a property for rent, meet with applicants to fill out rental applications. In that process, sometimes you get very, applicants who don't really know the whole process, and they're asked to notarize docs or not, but a lot of times they're asked to notarize docs. And the criminals are actually putting in documents that are not related to the rental application at all. It may be a trust deed, it may be a grant deed, it may be a power of attorney, it could be a trust. So they either will forge the signature because now they have your signature, or you have notarized, or if there's a notary there, your client or even you have notarized a document that is actually not part of the rental packet. So if you are working with renters, I would say, we see one question. Hold on one second. I would say tell them to be on alert and they're not going to be notarizing documents, right? Tell them first and foremost, you're not going to be notarizing documents when you're doing a rental application. So if someone's asking you to notarize stuff, they should be on high alert there. Michael threw up a question with respect to notification of recordings, and yeah, Kate is going to speak to that a little later in our presentation. There is a whole section about that. So yes, there is a notification. Okay, let's see here. Wire fraud is something that I know we've been hearing about for a very long time, and probably every single one of us has had a client, even maybe you yourself, who has been involved with or come upon a wire fraud scam. And perhaps some of us even have clients that have been scammed. I know Title has dealt with it for sure. So on the one hand, of course, I'll just say what all your brokers are saying, right? Use your wire fraud disclosure. Don't ever, ever, ever rely upon emailed wire wire instructions. Triple confirm with your escrow officer by phone. I wouldn't even try to triple confirm on email because we want to be super, super careful. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that get diverted. So be very careful of that and always tell your clients to triple check on wires. I remember one time I had a client that called and said, "Oh, just checking on the amount I'm supposed to wire," and we were very early in the process. And I said, "I don't know, what you're talking about, right? We'll tell you later." And she said, "Oh, Anne from Fidelity just emailed me and said, here's the wire amount, or please send your wire to this, and here's the wire instructions." Of course, somebody had fraudulently gone into the system and was trying to divert her wire funds. So I was like, oh my goodness. So that is something that I've personally experienced. We want to let you know that if your client is a victim of wire fraud or any type of cyber kind of crime, wire, crypto, and generally that's covering it, but cyber crimes, there's the path we're going to instruct you to take, which is number one, notify your financial institution immediately. They are the ones that are going to be best in the position to track that wire down and where it's going and potentially put a stop to it. I know you're probably going to be tempted to go to the police. And that's the next part we're going to tell you, but really you got to get in touch with your financial institution because they will be the ones on the front line. Then we're going to tell you there's a website called I as in Indiana, C as in cat, and three, the number three, ic3.com. And that's the government, and it's a government site, ic3.com. .gov, sorry, not .com, IC3.gov, and that stands for Internet Crime Complaint Center. And that's the FBI site where if you enter into that, they have people monitoring it constantly and they jump on it too. So the two things you should be doing immediately is number one, get in touch with your financial institution, and number two, immediately alert IC3.gov. If you can do this within 72 hours, we have seen success in reclaiming part, some, or I don't even know if all, but certainly part or some of the funds that have gone out. And of course, it's difficult. A lot of times it's just gone, and we know that. So it's just why we're so careful with wires. But here are two steps that you can take to help prevent, to try and recover some of the lost and recoup some of the losses. Okay, now escrow, this is part of the escrow scam, right? Because they pose as escrow officers to give you escrow instructions to wire your funds in. And so we've talked about that, how to avoid that, how to be careful about that, use your wire fraud disclosure, and then triple confirm, and then follow these steps. We want to let you know, though, that escrow has also been sucked into these crimes. We want you to be aware of something. A lot of times, or we know, right, we pay for title insurance, and escrow is ensuring clear title. What we have found in a number of our cases is that because the recorder's office has to record documents, and unless somebody has flagged those documents or somehow identified them as being fraudulent, they're going to show up and let's say, so I stole Kieran's property and now I'm selling it to Kate. And in the meantime, there was, oh, this is a different scenario. Sorry. I stole Kieran's property and Kieran had a $500,000 loan with Chase on it. And I file a deed of reconveyance showing that Chase has been fully paid off and has reconveyed the deed back to me now because I own it. That's fraudulent. That's not true, but nonetheless, it's within the chain of title and it shows up. Escrow will look at that. And we had a situation with an extremely well-known escrow company that all of us have used. So you'd be very surprised if this happened, where they insured clear title because they saw a recon deed back to, Wells Fargo or something, and said this title is clear, and the perpetrator was able to get another $1.5 million loan from a lending institution. They took out 1.5, had a false reconveyance, title insured clean title. The perpetrator went and took out another $1.5 million loan with a different institution. So now they have $3 million out on this property. And when we looked into it, we became aware of the fraud. We called the institution and said, we don't understand why you have filed a notice of default when you filed a reconveyance deed. And that's when the fraud for them was discovered. They said, there's absolutely no reconveyance. We are going to foreclose on this property. They owe $1.5 million. We informed them that Second Bank has another $1.5 million deed of trust on the property. And we show that, let's say Chase Bank was paid off. And escrow, unfortunately, for any, yes, someone said there needs to be a two-factor authentication. So let's tell you what's happening here. Escrow, unfortunately, did their due diligence to the extent they did with our thousands of dollars of escrow of title insurance, and looked at the recordings and saw the recon, took it at face value, did not call, and now I would assume are going to be potentially up for $1.5 million for the second lender. But when we presented this to a title presentation, a title gathering a little while back, I remember one of the heads of the title company said, we are now changing our policy and we are going to be, as someone just mentioned, double or triple confirming recons going back way further than they had in the original instance. They were going back 6 months to do confirmations, meaning, I guess, call or something. And they're now going back a year to a year and a half and doing more one-to-one conversations with the actual lender rather than relying on documents that have been posted. So be aware of that. And it was quite the shocker for everyone to find out that We're talking major lending institutions, major escrow companies, all getting, unfortunately, sucked into various aspects of the crimes. Karen, there's some things in the chat. Is there anything that we have not addressed at the moment? Let's see
Looks
here.
like we're still going to be okay with the VA loan, so I'm going that route. Period.
Oh,
Is that something for
that
us,
no,
or is that
that was not a question. That was a confidential client communication, I think. But
okay?
so
Got it.
no, I'm sorry. I'm just joking around. Please, everybody, try to keep your microphones muted while we're doing this presentation. I think I saw something in the chat about squatters' rights, and I
Yeah.
don't know if that ties into your presentation directly, but if you have some sort of fraud connection, please, by all means,
Yeah,
let
and
me
I'll
know.
speak, and if Katie, if you have something to add to that too. No, all right, here's the deal. Squatters' rights exist. Okay, that's going to be very localized, right? We know that there are housing rules and housing regulations deep down to the local level, right? Berkeley's going to be different from Oakland. Oakland's going to be different from Hayward. Hayward's different from San Francisco. So it's going to come down to a lot of local jurisdictional laws. Berkeley being, as we know, right? Berkeley being very high on the list of issues when it comes to this. But why do squatters' rights exist? Because they do. I don't really have an answer to that. I mean, right, housing, there's a we want people to be housed, that is for sure. And sometimes squatters has rights. Sometimes they're doing adverse possession, or they may be characterized as a squatter, but really it's some beef with the landlord and they are being called a squatter, but they're not a squatter. There are just certain processes and procedures we know that are painful to go through to actually remove individuals that shouldn't be there. But we see that happen. I mean, we see the criminals who have actually taken over homes successfully evicting people and utilizing the resources of the county in order to do so. And so it goes kind of it goes both ways. It's available. If someone's squatting your home, there are resources that we have for the county to get them evicted, but you do have to go through a process. Um, Kate, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think because we are sort of representing our office, have to be careful to get too political on these issues. I think that the question is a good one, and I think that we see the side of it that perhaps the people that are passing the laws do not see. And I think it's just we need to work on making it, the victims and what the circumstances are surrounding some of these issues. I do think that they are coming more to the forefront and there is a little more publicity about it. But I think generally it's an effort to make sure that people are housed and we don't want to create more of a homeless problem than we already have. So, but yeah, we encounter those can be very challenging in some of our cases where we have the actual, criminal defendants living in the homes.
Yep. So Kate is going to talk, let's see, we're going to go here. We're going to move into other aspects of the issues that we deal with, starting with artificial intelligence and real estate fraud. So Kate, take it away
Sure.
and share
I
that
do
with
see
us.
a question here from Susan where she says, I had the name on my deed changed to my trust and that how easy that was. Yes, it is. And as Abby mentioned, that is a circumstance that we encounter where like she said, the recorder's office, they don't have a lawyer at the window that's going to make sure that everything legally exists that allows for this person to change title and put something in a trust. And, the criminals definitely know that. And one of the topics we wanted to address was some of these challenges for prosecuting and investigating. And one of them is a lot of criminals, they will move properties into the names of trusts. And maybe these trusts don't exist and these trustees don't exist. And then you're following this chain where eventually we can attempt to find who the suspect is, but it's very easy to put property in a trust, and that is one of the tactics that criminals use to attempt to, steal title from people. Um, One of the topics that we get question we get a lot about is AI and how AI has impacted our world here. Um, Certainly in the criminal context, a lot of cases we have deal with fake documents. Abby mentioned fake deeds of reconveyance. We have fake trusts, fake bank statements. All of these fake documents are sort of the bread and butter of our real estate fraud practice. And what AI does is that it just makes them even more sophisticated and even more flawless. So, whereas before a case, we had a criminal was presenting fake bank records to a borrower. And he had gone in there, it looked like with some sort of program, and doctored the numbers. So it looked like he had a lot more assets than he had. But there were some errors that he made, and the daily balances didn't add up, and things like that that we were able to notice. And now I think with AI, those types of mistakes that alert law enforcement, it's just going to be a lot harder to detect. We've encountered people that have been investing with a financial advisor, and there's this very fancy website and investment account statements that they're receiving in the mail, and photos of the people they're talking with, and all of it was AI and fake. And unfortunately, this person lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think with AI, it means that our job gets even more challenging. But I do think that we're up to the task. So rest assured on that. Then I think I'll move into our real estate fraud notification program, because we did get a question about that. So you can see on the slide here, this is a letter. This was a program that we created in the DA's office, where if a document is recorded against a property, certain documents, the important ones, the the homeowner gets a letter that notifies them of the recording, gives them a copy of the face sheet of the recording, and has our contact information in case they are unfamiliar with this document being recorded. And we were paying a third-party vendor to collect that data, send the letters out. The nice part about it was the address that was used is the person that's paying the property tax. So not necessarily, the letter didn't just go to the address where the fraud was taking place. So that also helped make sure the right people became aware of the documents that were recorded. And apparently our program was so great, the legislature in Sacramento passed a law that is requiring all counties to do the program. I'm sort of kidding. They didn't reference our program, but I like to think that we were the inspiration. And so starting in January, every county in California, with the exception of LA County, I don't know how they got an exception, they this letter program will be in place, and it'll be run by the recorder's office rather than the district attorney's office. So it's a great program, and we're happy to see that it's been expanded. So it'll be a statewide program. The next topic, prosecution and investigative challenges. So I think I start with the fact that we live in the world of criminal law. So our cases are criminal cases. They involve convincing a jury of 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt every element of the crime. So sometimes it's simply easier to clean up a title, help a victim in civil court, because the standards that we have in criminal court are quite high. So being able to prove who the suspect is, that they committed all the elements of the crime, and there's certainly it can take an extremely long time to get through the criminal process as well. I mentioned one of the challenges is just sometimes figuring out who the suspect is. You can imagine a, a property, multiple wild deeds being recorded to different LLCs or into a trust, out of a trust, and being able to do that kind of research with, the Secretary of State's website and other databases can hopefully, steer us in the right direction. So our office we have a full real estate fraud unit where myself and Abby, and we have another deputy DA, the three of us are totally dedicated to real estate fraud. We have an investigative staff. These are they're current peace officers, but they're former law enforcement individuals that served, in Oakland Police Department and others that have come here and they investigate real estate fraud. So we, I think, have one of the best real estate fraud units in the state, and we have a full division where we like to keep cases from start to finish. The deputy DAs focus on are involved in the investigative stage and, can take the case through trial. So we do have all these challenges that we mentioned, but I think that we're equipped to handle them, and we have a great team of people. So at the end of this presentation, we'll show you the website and a way to submit a complaint, because we have somebody that is triaging cases, can make quick phone calls and hopefully get the case rolling fast. So anyway, I just wanted to say like a little plug for our division for Alameda County. Another challenge I wanted to mention is even figuring out who the suspect is in a case. So imagine your parent passes away and you are anticipating that you are inheriting this, the family home. And you learn that when you search, do a title search, you see that somehow, your mother, before she passed away, signed over, did a quitclaim deed to John Smith. And now John Smith owns the house, and perhaps John Smith took out a HELOC on the house, and you don't even know who John Smith is. And so we have to prove that there is no John Smith, and that the original homeowner didn't in fact intend to, hand the property over. So kind of the absence of a trustee in a trust, like those are some of the challenges that we face. So I just kind of wanted to mention that one. A lot, there's obviously we have fake notary stamps, stolen notary stamps with AI. I mean, fake, just completely generated notary information. And so those are some of the challenges that we face in criminal court. So I think we'll turn it over now back to Abby, because she'll give you some good news about being able to restore ownership to victims.
Yeah. Thank you, Kate. As part of our process in prosecuting a crime, there are different steps by which we can try to assist in the victim in obtaining their property back. So first of all, if there is a plea or there's a verdict of guilty after a jury trial, some kind of disposition of the case, we can frequently have a judicial order to void the fraudulent deeds. And so the wild deeds that have been recorded, they're ordered to be reversed, in which case they will come out of the chain of title. And then hopefully, of course, then the regular chain of title will control. We're also able to put a lis pendens on the property when we first charge a crime, which will at least alert anybody who's trying to do activity on the property legitimately that there's an issue with it, right? So that is something else we can do. However, we do want to note ours is a criminal process, right? And so the criminal process involves, obviously righting wrongs the way we can, and restitution, voiding deeds. But of course, a large part of the process is to identify the perpetrator and to, bring that person to justice. And so the criminal aspect of it kind of runs tandem to the civil aspect of restoring the deed and the lineage of the property in its rightful order. So we highly recommend people who are victims of crime to not just rely on the criminal process for us to identify the suspect, bring them to justice, and in that process, perhaps seek to find some way to, of restitution or fixing of the deeds. But we always say that the victim ought to be and should be following, and first and foremost, a civil path also, because civil action will focus just on restoring ownership, right? We'll battle in court, fraudulent deed transfers, question the authority of somebody who says they bought it or bought it from you, and however they did so. So the civil process is very important for restoring ownership rightfully to the owner. The criminal process seeks to, seek justice for the wrong that was done, and then tangentially address that civil wrong as well. So, but that takes a long time. And so we highly recommend that both paths are taken and to take a civil path towards reclaiming ownership on the owner's side. Yeah, and then Kate, there's some regulatory things that or departments that we as a team work with as well.
Yeah, I see a couple other questions. There was one about wire fraud and people
Let's see.
impersonating the escrow officer. And have we ever had that circumstance? I can't think of that happening. I don't know if Abby, you've encountered that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, the question says here, I give my clients the direct line of my escrow officer. Yes. Okay. Number one, we do say that, right? Don't verify via email, which is where the fraud is occurring to begin with. Call your escrow officer and we will know the legitimate number of our escrow officers, right? And then they can hopefully identify the voice. Okay, is AI getting more sophisticated and potentially doing that? Sure. We couldn't say that that's not happening. We have not come upon that yet. And at the same time, if the escrow officer's number is 510-278-3555, extension 3, um, that should be pretty good. And then also if your client is speaking live with the escrow officer, other forms of verifying that this is a legitimate person you're speaking with and who knows your transaction probably can be discerned. We have not seen spoofing. Can that happen? May that happen going forward? Possibly, but if you're the one taking the proactive steps to do the confirmation and to reach out to the right people, that should help prevent that, right? It's always going to be the incoming. It's when you're in receipt of the info and reacting to it that we're going to say, have your guards up, right? 1,000 times. If you're getting the email, if you're getting the call, if you're getting the text, you take the proactive step to then reach out to the people you know are legitimate and the means by which you know they are legitimate to do that confirmation. Um, and then we see, is increased money or penalties and prison time penalties the only solution for these crimes? Hard to
well, I
say.
can say it, I want to say yes, but no. I think that with these cases, a lot of times we are victim focused office. So if a victim, a lot of times we have in a plea bargain, there is a lot less jail time than one might anticipate if they're willing to have a early acceptance of responsibility. We can void all the fraudulent documents and restore the title for the victim. That is kind of our main focus. These are we see how devastating these crimes can be for victims, but at the same time, they are not violent crimes, and so at least, especially in our county, I wouldn't say that the courts are really bringing down the hammer in terms of jail time and and the fines are those are difficult as well because most of the time the criminal defendants don't have the ability to pay, and so the fines don't necessarily deter anybody either. So I think it's a complicated issue. I think that the biggest hurdle is that it's so easy to file a document in the recorder's office. And I don't really know what the solution is for that. But anyway, Abby, if you have anything to add to the
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that occurs when somebody either pleads guilty or is found guilty or whatnot is we do put them on probation, and part of those terms could be you are not allowed to well, when people have, and Kate will speak to this actually in just a bit with the Department of Real Estate, when there are people that are involved with real estate, sometimes they have real estate licenses, so we seek to have those those jurisdictions or those departments either restrict them, put them on probation, or take them away. Our probationary terms will frequently require that they are not allowed to set foot within a recorder's office and therefore do their fraudulent activity. Of course, there is recording online, but there's different steps involved with that, and we can possibly enjoin some of those things too. We did have a case where somebody had been convicted federally and was put on 5 years of federal probation, where they could not go to a recorder's office and could not record things. And on day 5 years and one day after 5 years, they were right back at it. And so some of the prevention aspects we take are you can't go near, but you can't put someone on probation forever, right? So perhaps one of the best things we can do is to inform, and you inform your clients so everybody's on alert and doesn't get sucked into the problem or can identify the problem right away. Now, this goes to Maureen's question. She said she had a vendor who's somebody put a quitclaim deed against their property, and then the victim, the costs were too high for them to pursue the charges or to pursue getting their property back, and they almost lost it. Two things I would say. Okay, it's vacant lots. We'll talk about that in a second. One is there are services. We have adult protective services, but that, of course, that's more like elders, and they have come to the rescue of people who are been victims of crime and need assistance and need some kind of temporary assistance, whether it is monetary, life, living, housing, that kind of thing. So there are social services. I would say go to social services when you have clients that are in need and have been victims of crime and are unable to take care of it. I don't really understand the aspect of the quick claim and the property tax liens, because property taxes will accrue on their own. And so how this person's quick claim deed turned into property tax liens is a little bit of a disconnect, but I get that, we're summarizing. So I would say property tax liens is something a little bit different, and they needed to have kept up their property tax payments. But nonetheless, social services can certainly help. We do see, okay, now someone asked about vacant land issues. We have some vacant land. In fact, we got a case right now where there's so much fraud and layers of fraud that there's a current bona fide purchaser who is developing the property, and we are uncovering that way back when the title had been wrongfully changed, and now this person owns property that they probably illegitimately own. And so we are dealing with things like that. Do we work with portals? We don't work with portals. We have not. I'm not exactly sure. Well, so no, I'm going to say no, in that we're not talking to Redfin and Zillow and Realtor.com and Homes.com and all that. But nonetheless, we are dealing with vacant lot crimes for sure. Not as much though as single family. I keep hearing about vacant homes when it comes about real estate fraud. And honestly, we're here to tell you that it's a lot more happening with single family homes than vacant lands, FYI. Although yes, vacant land scams nationwide are happening. Okay. Anyway, so Kate, you were going to talk about collaborating with like the Department of Real Estate.
Yeah, this is to scare all of them in case they were suspicious or tempted to commit their own real estate fraud crimes. A question we often get is, do we sometimes prosecute agents? And certainly the answer is yes. I can give a few examples. We have had slash have a case involving two real estate agents that they in the stack of paperwork back when we weren't doing the DocuSign everything, the stack of paperwork, some deeds of trust got slipped in there by the agent, and the victim, an elderly lady, signed away and eventually never paid the loan because she was unaware of the deed of trust. And then once she got dementia, the agent foreclosed on the property using that deed of trust that was signed and notarized by the victim. I had another case where the agent was also had his contractor's license and submitted fake invoices for work that supposedly hadn't been done, or that had been done on the home. And he was able to siphon off quite a bit of money that way, submitting those fake invoices. And then we have agents that they've lost their license, but they continue to practice or convince people to invest in things. So the Department of Real Estate, we do work collaboratively with them, and when appropriate, make sure that people lose their license and they're unable to continue, as a licensed agent. So then it looks like we're getting close to running out of time, but I'll go through. I wanted to mention different legislative solutions that have happened. I mentioned the one where we're going to have this statewide notification program, which I think is wonderful. There's another bill in the legislature right now. It's SB 1307, and that one. So currently, in order to get deeds or fraudulent documents voided in the criminal process, we have to have a conviction. So that's after a jury trial or in a plea bargain. What this bill was intending to do was to allow the documents to be voided at the preliminary hearing stage of a case, which is usually much earlier on. Unfortunately, that one, they're still kind of battling it out, and it looks like we're not going to get success at the preliminary hearing stage, but now we're hoping that it can remain in place. There's a whole different area of law called mental health diversion. And so criminal defendants are getting mental health diversion when they can prove they have a mental illness diagnosis, and their crime fits into one of these categories, and they can get their cases dismissed if they go to mental health treatment. That was preventing us from voiding these deeds because there was no conviction. So hopefully the new bill will allow us to at least help victims in those cases. And then finally, we have just the support that we try to give for victims. This is our website. It's at the top of this slide in yellow. I did not come up with this really long website address, but anyway, that's what it is, and it'll take you to our page where we talk about real estate fraud. We talk about different resources. There is a part of, tips to avoid real estate fraud. And it does have some pointers on there. A few I'll just point out. We discussed the vacant lot scams and the single family home scams, and being contacted by people, via email for you to represent them in, purchasing a home. We just strongly urge you to do everything in person that you can. Don't deal with people over, at a minimum, do a Zoom call. That these people are often that they're unable to do that. So just different red flags: people selling for under market value, people with, an urgency, an illness that's causing them to maybe do something suspicious. So, just like use your common sense, go with your gut. And I think if you take anything away from today's presentation, is that go to our website. You can submit a complaint online. There's a button at the bottom here where you click submit a complaint online. And that way we can hopefully, help resolve the issue soon, or, figure out what's going on and create and open up a criminal case. Um, so anyway, we definitely prioritize victims. We collaborate with other agencies in the county, Adult Protective Services, County Council. We have a meeting called the FAST meeting where we discuss, different cases involving elders that are victims of real estate fraud. We have, the ability to help people when, we kind of all work together. So please don't ignore your instincts. And I guess that's my suggestion. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Janisha, you had a question. You said going back to the letter that Kate was talking about and the notification from the recorder's office. The question was, does that get sent whenever a deed is recorded? This notice is sent whenever there is activity on the deed, correct? So number one, people need to pay attention to those letters when they come. And however, this is transitioning over to the recorder's office. So we did want people to be aware that, as Kate mentioned, the Senate bill requires recorder's office do it. And so it is transitioned now over to them. As they are getting set up, there may be a few months where that's not happening. What we would say is people shouldn't just rely on getting a letter, but you can proactively go on to the county website and look up your own properties. So one of the ways, because someone said, there's another question is, hey, how do we stop this thing? Is be on high alert. Take proactive measures to check the documents and the deeds, on your owned property. If you see anything wild, crazy going on there, that's not supposed to be there, go on high alert, right? Another thing we want to say to tell you is a lot of the fraudsters communicate when they're doing investment frauds via WhatsApp. And that is because, of course, that goes internationally. Now, if there's a lot of legitimate conversations going on WhatsApp, we get that. But do be aware, we have found a higher percentage of fraudulent behavior emanating from WhatsApp communications. Of course, text also, but when you see WhatsApp, that should add another layer of wait a minute, right? So be careful there. Okay. Let's see here. Any other questions?
It's now or never, people. If you have any questions, you can unmute and
Could you show your
as-
phone numbers again?
oh, they wanted the
Yeah,
contact information and how to get in touch with you.
we will show you. And all we're going to say is this is Kate and I aren't on the front line of investigation. So not to say you shouldn't call us, but where people, so I'm going to put this back up where Kate had just talked about it. Hold on, how do I share this thing again? This is where people should go to submit a complaint if they have one, because that is where the initial complaints go and where our inspector teams, our law enforcement, our investigators take it up from there. Kate and I don't get involved until, of course, there's been investigation. But if you have a question or something, certainly let me go backwards and how do I get there? There we go. Here's our contact information. If you just like further information or some follow-up from this presentation today, here it is. Okay,
And we'd be happy to field any questions that you might have, and we could forward them to both Kate and Abby as well. So
great, great.
I think we have one time maybe for one really short question. I think Janisha had her hand up. So if you wanted to just chime in there, Janisha, real quick.
Yeah, thank you, ladies, so much. I put a comment in the chat. There was an advertisement that I saw in a commercial in like Florida because apparently like this type of fraud is happening all over. And they were advertising services for homeowners to pay like monthly fees to protect the title. Are these like legit services? Should we encourage homeowners to look into those types of services to have like an extra source of protection?
So my recommendation would be this. So we can't comment as to the legitimacy of these because I don't know what company is. It might be and it might not. Okay. However, given what's happening in California, okay, Alameda County, number one, which then hopefully spawned action by the Senate for the state of California, I would say you could recommend to your clients to speak with their escrow officers or the recorder's offices in their jurisdictions and say, hey, I'm interested in understanding how I can be alerted to deed activity. What are the parameters or what are the services offered by your office, like California, or do you recommend services? And they will know. So I would pass those questions over and tell them to contact their local recorder's office in Florida, Michigan, whatever it is, to talk to those direct resources to say, what is it what do you recommend for us to be able to make sure we're monitoring, keeping track of recordings that with respect to my property?
Sounds like sound advice. So thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Abby and Kate. We're at the top of the hour.
Yep.
You actually held on for longer than we expected. So thank you so much for staying with us a little bit longer. We're so fortunate to have professionals like you at the fraud unit prosecuting these types of crimes. So please, if ever you want to come back out and talk with our members, our line is open, our door is open for you guys to come back.
Great.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.